Holden, where are you today?
Oh, look, I think it's a day of great shame for Australia. There was once upon a time in Australia where General Motors Holden accounted for almost 2% of our national economy. Today they're laying off 600, 800 people, and it's, you know, not just the end of a great Australian business, but it's the end of an era, I think.
I mean, do you drive a Holden car?
Not at the moment, but I have driven one for a long period of my life.
So did I, but I don't now. Do you drive a car?
Never have.
So part of the problem is, of course, Australians weren't buying the cars, so they were uneconomic, weren't they, Rita?
They were, but we have also handed over hundreds of millions in taxpayer funds to subsidies to prop them up. But you're right, you look at the sales last year, I think only about 42,000 Holden sold. That's a drop in the ocean.
About 3.7% of the Australian market.
Indeed, but those sales figures were for a year when Australia was no longer General Motors was no longer manufacturing cars in Australia. I mean, it was only a few short years ago that General Motors was having 100,000 Commodores being sold a day. They had 400 a day, a year I should say. They had 400 a day rolling off the production line. So they were a very successful manufacturer in Australia. Yes, they did receive state support, as many industries do, as coal sector does, many industry sectors do. But I think for ideological reasons, Joe Hockey and to a lesser extent Tony Abbott went after them, and it's a tragedy that we're no longer making cars in Australia.
Well, I think the history was they came looking for more money and the government said no, you need Australians to buy the car and vote with their feet, and you already received significant subsidies, we're not adding to it, and then that's when they threw the toys out of the cot and progressively have walked away to the point today where the brand won't be on the street. A firefighter last night, I'm not sure, I'll talk to my producers here if we've got the grab to show you, but on the project last night, we've got it, we just might play that from the project on Channel 10 last night.
And I asked him the question, I said, what's going on? And he said, you finished because of your allegations and foul language against the Prime Minister of the country while representing the RFS. And didn't know you could get sacked from a volunteer organisation, but apparently you can.
Right, well, where's the due diligence here? Because the Rural Fire Brigade, volunteer, the RFS in New South Wales, has made it clear that this firefighter last night who said he was sacked has not been sacked and he's still on the books, Rita.
Yeah, there seems to be a great deal of confusion because then I've also heard he is a volunteer, but they've said they haven't, perhaps hasn't been assigned many shifts since this whole drama unfolded. But you would think the project would at least check with the RFS and have a statement from them to respond to this claim. And I've noticed today all the people who are championing this guy and because he's being used as a tool to bash Scott Morrison are suddenly shying away because there's actually the only politician that he has any praise for is Pauline Hanson. So that kind of counters the narrative of this champion of the left taking it to Scott Morrison. So it's been quite amusing watching the backflips happening in that world.
And look, I know that he put himself out there on the project last night, but I'd be very reluctant to go anyone who's, as I understand it, part of his home was damaged in the fire. I think all of this has been pretty traumatic for people. But this, you know, we're still now talking about the fire season. I know with the rains things are a little bit better off, Nick, but Celeste Barber's having a real battle to get that money out the door, $52 million, constrained by legislation about what fundraising can be provided to the RFS. What do you think needs to happen here?
Look, it's absolutely extraordinary. She's raised $53 million from 1.3 million people that gave that money, wanting to see that go to firefighting services and wildlife relief, and the money's being blocked because of essentially regulation. They've just got to find a way through that and make sure it happens promptly. You know, it's been a terrible summer, but amongst all the awfulness of it, there were some beautiful moments which remind us of our humanity. And when she stepped up and so many people contributed to her campaign from around the world, I thought it did remind us of our common humanity. And the fact that that money's now not getting through, it's just unacceptable. Like, it's just got to be fixed.
Well, I don't think she ever imagined, well, probably nobody would have, that it would have exploded so in such a huge manner. But there is a thing, if you say the money is going to the RFS, then the money has to go to the RFS, because if people are putting their hands in their pocket and donating under that assumption, then I can understand why there is this problem now, because if you want the money to go to people who've lost their homes in the fires or fire-affected communities, and the RFS isn't about that, that's about buying
equipment
trucks
and so on.
equipment,
but it was
and
also assistance for firefighters, particularly firefighters who may have suffered injury or even loss of life, to help their families. That was another application for the
But
funds.
it shouldn't be beyond the wit of everyone sitting around the
Exactly.
table, and I don't think there's any need to have lawyers there. They can be shown the door. It is not beyond the wit of people to resolve this quickly
hopefully.
and seamlessly, and it could well be regulatory change required. I shouldn't think it needs to be legislation.
Well, you would hope that someone would step in, whether it's Gary Johns or somebody else, and say, OK, we'll make a special allowance in this case because it's such a huge amount.
No, it'll be
that was
legislatively constrained, but what I'm saying, where are the premiers, where are the emergency ministers? This is the sort of stuff that can be sorted out with a few bureaucrats in, 20 minutes, I reckon. Nick, you've seen that happen before?
I would agree. I mean, I was actually pleased to see that publicity today, because it will put the blowtorch on the regulators and the politicians to come up with a fix quick, smart.